point, Vinay, is that technicians need to know their customers well enough to know, like, what is that preferred form of communication? What is that? What do they? How involved do they want to be? Because you might have a customer that's like, you know what, just leave the stuff at my door. I don't ever really want to see you or talk to you, but I still want you to communicate with me. So I want you to still, basically, if you see an opportunity for, I don't know, if you might see, you're walking around my house and you see potential termites. I still want you to tell me, but I just don't want you to tell me. Tell me at my door, don't tell me to my face.
Yeah. Good. So everyone, we got a brand new episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast here. And today I've got Adam Holt as a guest. And I want to tell you more about Adam here in a little bit. But first, I want to just take you through a quick journey of what the Business Blind Spots Exposed, I'm going to call it BBSE because that's a lot shorter, what the BBSE podcast is all about. For me personally, it started a long time, I should say professionally. It started with, I used to think just knowing everything out of a book would make me a superhero. Then I started realizing the more people I had around me, the more perspectives I had. Actually, that's what made me a superhero, because I had the perspectives of others. Data helped. Data helped me understand what was happening in the organization. But if I didn't understand the story, I didn't get it. That's why I started investing in asking other people for what they thought. And Business Blind Spots Exposed as a podcast is about exposing what others have gone through, the tears that they've shed and the experiences, cuts, bruises, and scars that they've gotten along the way, and the stories that they have found. So as a company, we build data to show you what's happening in your culture, who your productive employees, who's engaged, who's not engaged, and why. But if you don't understand the story below it, beneath it, kind of doesn't matter. But today, I've got Adam Holt, and the topic of our podcast today is the numbers behind insects. So Adam, I'm finally going to talk about you.
Hey!
So Adam Holt, his role is technical director at Advanced IPM in the pest control industry. I'm going to read a little bit from his bio here, so I'm sorry if this sounds like reading a little bit, but there's a lot of things to unpack here about Adam that I really liked. He's a university board certified entomologist, and I love that he wrote this and he told us about himself. He's got a passion for training, software technology, insect identification, and pest control. Gosh, it sounds like you were made for the pest control industry from just reading that alone. Learning every day is critical in feeding his personality, and just in sort of the pre-conversation here, I can tell you that that's a true statement. And from our conversation yesterday, he's just a very open person. What you say, his life is too short not to live at the fullest, and you literally never know how you can impact someone else and change their life. And I love the way you just lean forward into conversations and wanting to help others and empower others. You love networking and being in the field, and always excited about what tomorrow brings. Adam, one other thing that you shared with me is that you're proud of is that you worked with Service Pro for a number of years, and you had a patent on a remote monitoring capability. Let's start there. That sounds pretty exciting. Tell me about that. Tell me more about how you got involved in that. What was the capability that you built there?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that great introduction. And so the product is called Serve Sensor. So it's obviously off the foundation of Service Pro or Serve Suite, all those things. And so basically it is a remote monitoring product for rodents and or wildlife. So, I mean, it was kind of cool to be part of this experience from literally conception all the way to execution, manufacturing and product manufacturing out of China to taking a black box from Home Depot and putting all the hardware in there and working with the engineers to develop, all of the different aspects of it. And so, we did everything from beta testing it, in the field with, I lived in St. Augustine, Florida for about 12 years. So beautiful place on the beach, and there was a state park there. So I would go out and connect with the state park guy, the wildlife guy, and we would put this little box on there, and I would set him up with a text message notification. So he would basically get the little notifications on his Apple Watch every time there was a hit. And so I remember one night we caught this massive possum. I mean, it was huge. And it was really cool to set the threshold on the notifications and see every hour, right, that we got a hit. We knew there was something in the cage and it wasn't a false positive per se. And so the next day we went out and we actually verified it, and it was just such a cool experience. But that technology is huge now in the industry.
Oh, you went mute there. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I wonder what happened with the connection there. We're having some technical difficulty here. I'm sure we'll get Adam back on in a second here. I can see you, Adam, but I lost the audio. This is the wonderful thing about the internet, right? You start to come to rely on it so much. I wonder if that's the connection, or there's a little settings icon, Adam. I don't know if that may have switched off. There's all right. Let's try this different connection. How's that?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right, I'm going to get off my phone.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
I can. That's good. I'm assuming you can hear me as well.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was on my phone, and it looks like it was something to do with my phone. Somebody calling in on my phone.
Of course, right? Perfect timing.
So I went to my computer. We should be good now. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
I was to get back to where we were. I was trying to say that so there's a lot of remote monitoring technology is kind of huge in the industry right now, right? We've got Bell Sensing, we've got ActiveSense with Corteva. I mean, we've got one with Bayer. And so, I think for me, it was really cool to be a part of that experience from so early on. I started that experience with Service Pro back in 2014. So just a cool journey to be a part of.
So talk me through that. I mean, the pest control industry has kind of been exploding compared to most other markets. What did you, working with that park ranger, I think is what you said, and working with that ranger, what did you learn in the course of that experience? Because I suspect, as opposed to a standard residential customer, the interaction with that ranger was completely different. And what did you get out of that experience there?
He loved the technology, the fact that it wasn't available yet, and then it was something where we even took it to the level of like he was trying to capture this fox one day, like out on a remote island. So I created this whole contraption where I went and bought a car battery. I bought like this container, and we loaded this thing on a boat, and then we carried it out on an island. And he loved the fact that I think he just loved the fact that he didn't have to go and check the device all the time. And he basically could set up, X number of traps, right? So we could set up 10 traps across this entire state park. And the beauty of the remote technology was that it helped him to kind of not necessarily have to spend all of his time checking traps all the time. He could kind of focus his efforts on which one he was getting notifications from.
So I think what I'm hearing here in all the companies that I've started, understanding the perspective of the person that you're helping out here goes a long way. In this case, it wasn't so much trapping that particular wildlife that was the issue. It was just the convenience, where he didn't have to hop into a boat in this case and head out to that island to do something. He could trap them and just know, oh, the trap has been made. It just made his life easy peasy, I think is kind of what I got as sort of a core message there. Is that right?
Absolutely. And there was also something I forgot to mention is there was a piece of this where you could hook like a zip tie right on the front of the wildlife trap, and you could hook it through the sensor. And so if the trap closed, you got a notification saying the trap had closed, right? And then obviously if you caught something and it was going back and forth underneath the PIR motion sensor, you knew you had caught something. So the beauty of even the trap closing alert notification, if he never got that trapdoor alert notification, he knew a way to better go and kind of plan his route per se. You know what I mean? And so just kind of taking that to other technologies like Bell Sensing. A lot of people don't realize Bell Sensing is just huge in the industry, and I only kind of point on that because I have a lot of experience with it. But that one's more Bluetooth technology versus Wi-Fi or LoRa based, and so it's kind of cool because a technician can go in and they open up their app, right? And within 100 feet, as long as their Bluetooth is on, it will bring up alerts of all of the devices and anything that's happened with those devices. So they can basically check all their devices within 100 feet of just standing there, you know?
And how do you think that has changed the industry? I mean, how do you think the industry is shifting because of that new technology?
I think the industry is shifting a ton in that sense because it's creating the efficiency for the technician, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into play. The technician is not having to bend over, right? So you're basically probably decreasing all of your, your comp claims, your workers' comp claims for something like that. So there's less bending over, there's less doing this. I mean, it doesn't take away from checking the devices per se. It just creates the ability to be able to increase the efficiency for that visit. And then also, it's a cool thing that you can do is you can also pass some of that cost. You can take some of that cost away from the customer. So like, let's say I was going to this commercial facility and I was doing, I don't know, I was charging them $300 a month, right, to go do a visit. Well, now basically, since I'm able to spend less time at that account, I can basically pass off some of those savings to the customer.
So there's a couple of things I'm hearing here, and I want to kind of unpack this a little bit. And by the way, Keith, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being on. So I heard efficiency of the technician, and look, it's called Business Blind Spots Exposed because I'm constantly trying to identify things that business owners, leaders, and pest control companies can do to kind of step it up to the next level. And I think that's a key phrase right there: efficiency of the technician. If you can make that technician more, and there's actually two words I like to use there. One is efficiency, and there's effectiveness, right? And efficiency is about getting more stuff done, and effectiveness is how well it's done. I think what I'm hearing with these remote trap capabilities or this infusion of technology in the industry, you can not only increase the efficiency of the technician, but potentially even the effectiveness of the technician, which could lead to a cost savings or more value for that customer. Am I unpacking that properly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, you can do both of those things. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the reality of, the software that the technician is using, right? I mean, if they're using the software and if the company is taking full advantage of what the software offers, that also is going to create efficiency for the technicians. And by that, I simply mean, is the technician manually entering their notes, right, in the software, or is the company taking advantage of creating those default templates on the back end for conditions, for application methods, for target pests, all those things, anything that the technician can basically kind of just, click through and get through very quickly versus having to make a lot of notes can create that efficiency as well.
So I'm going to say the first blind spot that I think I heard and I kind of extracted from what you were saying there is, look, for a business, if a business starts to focus on increasing the efficiency and the effectiveness of a technician, there's a real unlock that adds to more value potentially for that customer. It may be a reduction of price or just value that you can expose or deliver to that customer. But it's not just, and so the second one that I'm hearing here is this blind spot. It's not just about remote monitoring solutions. There's this whole idea of using software to unlock this efficiency and effectiveness as well. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you have to be using it's almost, what do they say? Garbage in, garbage out. You have to be using the software. Whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So you have to put forth that little bit of effort in the beginning to either make it what you want and customize it to what you want, or you hopefully, whatever software company you're utilizing, they have some sort of cookie cutter database that you can take advantage of.
Sure. So tell me a story, because I will tell you, I'm a kid at heart. I always love stories because those are the things I remember. I think most people do, but I definitely do.
Right.
Talk to me about maybe a day in the life, or where you've seen it, where this software made a change or something operated better because they used the effectiveness or the efficiency went up because someone was using, whether it's Pest Routes or WorkWave, Pest Pack, or BrioStack, any one of those softwares out there. how did the situation get better? How was the experience enhanced because of that?
I don't want to focus on any specific software company per se, but I'll just say in general, I know there's some out there where they've taken advantage of creating those kind of cookie cutter databases, right? For like a small mom and pop company, just because of the fact that, like we talked about earlier, kind of offline, you might have a mom and pop company that has, an owner and let's say 4 technicians, right? Like I actually have good friends that own a company in California that literally, I think they have 5 or 6 technicians, so they have 4 routes, and they're a $1.75 million company. So they do pretty well for a small mom and pop company. But, they've definitely taken advantage of that software and taken advantage of, utilizing that software to its efficiency so that they can grow and so that they can, be efficient in the field. And so I think a good example would just be, to make sure that whatever software you're using, if you have a support contact for that software, make sure you're reaching out to them and communicating with them. And I think a lot of people honestly don't even look at like the simple thing of like, what are those different database perimeter fields inside the software that I need to make sure I'm utilizing properly. But there's, what I should say is that most softwares these days are actually hopefully keeping up and competing with everybody, right? So they're trying to offer all of the same verticals, i.e., whether that be a digital logbook, text message note, SMS notifications to customers, whatever that might be.
Sure. Yeah, some are ahead of the curve, some are not so far ahead of the curve, but I think there's probably a general suite of capabilities that all of them offer. I want to switch a little bit more back. To your background. You're a board certified entomologist. You're technical director. Tell me a little more about your role and in terms of some of the challenges in your role and how do you approach them?
So I guess and if we take a step back, in my journey, right, I've been in the industry 22 years now. I actually started back with the Department of Agriculture in Gainesville, Florida, when I went to University of Florida there in the entomology program. And I worked in their entomology department as a laboratory technician, making a measly like $24,000 a year, with almost a master's degree. And I was working part-time for a diptera specialist and part-time for an araneologist. I even go back to like times like that and I look at how basic even technology was back then and how far we've advanced, but I started there, I worked there. I've done everything from teaching 7th and 8th grade science and high school biology to working for mosquito control and being an environmental health specialist and all of the above. And so I think, I've always been an advocate of technology. I remember even having like the Apple computer, the Macs, back in the day, the old school like desktop ones, the big, huge fat ones, And so, I think where I'm kind of going with this is just that the increase in technology, I think a lot of people need to look to technology to help support and to help create the efficiency in many ways. And I guess a good example is even in my current role, right? We all had COVID hit, last year. So COVID hit us hard in March of 2020. I feel like it was like one day we were all working in our office and the next day we were all out.
Yeah.
You ever watch Project One Way? One day you're in, the next you're out. And so, I think where I'm going with this is that like I had to quickly take everything and pivot, right? And so let's say I was in my office and all of the technicians were coming into the branch and we were all meeting in the branch, right? Now they all have to go remote. So not only did they go remote, but everything about them had to go remote. And so I had to quickly pivot and come up with ways and resolutions to get all of those things accomplished remotely. And so a simple thing is like pest control companies have to do an annual respirator training, right? And so all of that I would do in the branch and I would do on paper. Now I had to take all that paper and format it to DocuSign, right? Some form of technology. I had to get it all implemented very quickly so they could do everything in that respect. All of our trainings now are on softwares and different softwares. So I look to all of the technology and the software as a solution because in the beginning it takes effort, but after I have it all basically formatted properly, it's going to be easy peasy from here on out.
And I'll throw out a word we've already used here is the idea of efficiency, the idea that when they're coming into the office, that was one way of delivering, one channel of delivering something. But now that a lot of people have shifted to remote because they've had to, being able to do it via software has allowed an efficient, an economy of scale or an efficiency that you didn't have before, didn't necessarily have to think about before. And net, do you think things have gotten better as a result of it, or has it stayed the same? What's your opinion?
I love it. I mean, just to give you a good example, right? I mean, granted, I think the big challenge you're going to face is that a lot of people miss the in-person stuff, right? They miss that connection. That's the big challenge, right? And the technology side is, yes, we can all be on Zoom, we can all be looking at each other, but it's not the same as you can feel somebody when they're near you. You know, and so you're losing that connection. So that's really, to me, the big challenge, and the big, I guess the challenge I would give anybody is when they move over to this remote world, how do you maintain that connection with everybody? You know, and I was going to give you another example on the software side is that I've become really involved in PCOC, which is the Pest Control Operators of California, and we went from having these in-person meetings every week to having to meet remotely. And so the in-person meetings, we would do fundraisers, we would do raffles, right? And we would basically generate a lot of money for the organization. So I moved us all to a technology called, it's called Chance to Win. And it's a raffle, it's an online virtual raffle ticketing system. And so I actually implemented that for our district. I just did it for I just did the fundraiser for the entire state of California, where I generated over $5,000 in ticket sales.
Wow.
And so, but on a branch level, I've been generating around 600 a month. And so it's just been an awesome, efficient, thing that we've been able to implement. And in the beginning, it took me time to learn the software, but now that I know how to do it, I do it real quick every month.
Things go much faster once you've built that automation in there, right?
Correct. Yeah. Sorry, I'm off track.
No, that's okay. I mean, this is not meant to be a course that has a syllabus to follow. It's really meant to be more of just pulling out what I think are interesting learnings along the way. So I think number one was this idea of the efficiency of the technician, or the effectiveness of that technician. Number two was this idea, what I'll call the blind spots, right? Number two was that software can increase that efficiency and effectiveness, and companies that lean in can stop the garbage in, garbage out, and increase it and put high value stuff in and get high value stuff out. But I think number three is that, look, the blind spot here is that you have software, you probably have some of these systems already in place. You may not really be fully leveraging it. There's a learning curve there. There always will be. But on the other side of it, there might be a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. Is kind of, so the number three is pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we there's a really cool software out there that you can use now. It's an LMS software. It's a license management software that we're using for all of our CEU training, and it's incredible because we went from maintaining so for instance, in California, you have to have a structural pest control, operator's license or applicator or field rep, and you have to get like 16 CEUs every 3 years. We were maintaining all of that previously through Excel sheets. You know what I mean? Now we use this software and it literally does it all for you. And it's just like the savings the time that I've been able to save my CSRs, like everybody in general, like across the entire platform, it's just been like huge. I mean, like I go back to a simple thing as far as like, whenever they would do CEU trainings previously, the CSR would have to print off the certificate of completion from the trainer, fill it out, scan it in, save it in this place. This software now literally generates the certificate of completion for them and holds it as a repository in the software. So they literally have to spend zero time doing the certificate of completion now, where they used to probably spend at least an hour or two for every training times 12 trainings a year. So I know you like to get back to the numbers. Sorry.
No, that's okay, because I think this is kind of where it all leads to. I mean, I've been in and around the software industry for many years now. My background is artificial intelligence, machine learning, software development, and doing in all of that engineering. At the end of the day, software is all about productivity, right?
Right.
The idea is that it takes me 10 minutes to do X, but if I can teach the system, or the system already knows that I need to do X, Y, and Z, it can take it from taking 1 hour potentially down to minute and a half to click the button, click print, and say I want black and white, not color, and those are the choices I need to make. And my life just got a heck of a lot easier, especially when I got to do it 50 times over once a month, right?
Right.
So I think the numbers are lying in the narrative here, right? It's a huge savings of time if you invest in the technology, because there is the what I'll call the from the discipline or the learning as an entomologist. I mean, there's kind of the technical learning there as far as how to think about bugs. But then there's the other side of it, which is running the business, which is all the numbers behind how to get efficiency and that effectiveness. Those words keep coming up.
Right.
And I think that's what you're saying is the software just keeps unlocking that. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it looks like we have a message coming up from Jerry. What's he saying?
Yeah, see, all the systems you guys are talking about in the long run tells the employees that you care about them. The automated accountability piece is critical. Well done. Thanks,
Nice.
Jerry. That's a great point. Automated accountability. I actually like that. What about how do you think about that word, automated accountability? How does that resonate with you?
I mean, if the software provides that, I love that because I mean, it's kind of like a simple like reminder, right? You could set it up for QAs, right? Quality assurance assessments, anything that you're trying to, automate or standardize. The fact that you can if you could create automated accountability. I mean, and to Jerry's point, he's spot on. One of the cool things about the LMS, the license management software, is that the cool thing is I'm working with this company. Any software I use, I'm always working with the software company to help enhance it. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like they should just be giving me the software for free because I help them make it so much better. But so a good example is that he brought up a good point, is that that's one of the things I'm working on with LMS, is to be able to send out reminders to say, hey, John, or hey, Jerry, you're coming up on your renewal for your license. You still need this many more CEUs. Here's that accountability reminder.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I put a lot of posts on LinkedIn, and one of the posts talks about this idea that I think employees who are engaged by their leadership at least once a week are 66% more engaged than employees who aren't. And
Okay.
the thought that occurs to me is, if you're paying whatever much money you're paying to your employees and they're not engaged, well, why are you paying them if they're not engaged? I mean, what exactly is the point of that effort? And the only way to do that is to lean in. And I think this is kind of what the automated accountability is if you keep telling them what the expectations that you have of them are, well, that gives them the way that then they know which path to run and what they need to do. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing a little bit from you is with this license management system, it kind of tells them, hey, this is coming up. You need to get your certification or your license renewed because you are kind of no utility to yourself or to me. If you don't, let's get to that place together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, part of one thing I do in my role as well is I organize all the CEUs for the entire company. Okay. So I connect with whether it be, third-party manufacturers, distributors, whoever I might consider that trainer, anything from like MGK, Syngenta, Zocon, any of those things. I kind of connect directly with those reps, and then I set up all the trainings for the company year round. There's a multitude of reasons for that. One of them is that, we can all be cohesive and on the same page, right? Yep. Which is important because we're becoming bigger and bigger. I mean, we're in Nevada, we're in Northern California, all the way down to Bakersfield. I mean, we span almost the entire state, and so, it's kind of important to make sure that we have, we streamline the training process. That's one of them. And then B, I can also make sure that all the technicians are getting all of the required hours they need in those categories, right? So for structural pest control field rep, they have to have a branch 2 or a branch 3. They have to have their IPM, their rules and regs. They have to cover all these categories.
Yeah. So Jerry says that's exactly what I was talking about, Vinay. And yeah, this idea of being able to set expectations automatically. I mean, let's go back to that piece of software generating that license. Instead of taking an hour, if it takes you a minute and a half to do it, right? Or just a couple of clicks.
Right.
Oh gosh, it makes it so easy for people to figure out how they're doing. And I think that's ultimately what everybody needs is a measuring stick to just say, here's how you measure up, right? And then they can figure out whether they care enough to improve or not. And if they do, well, they'll probably keep working at the company. If they don't, well, let's have a conversation, right?
Right.
Isn't that the way it's supposed to work?
Right. I would say so. What did Keith say here?
Yeah, Keith's saying, so these system software can also help invigorate your path to precision and overall data experience and accelerate analytics to help understand the data.
Yeah, I completely agree with Keith. I mean, one of the key things, one of the main reasons that kind of having either that cookie cutter database, right, or having all of those database fields inside of your software set up properly is that if you kind of restrict, not necessarily complete restriction, but if you kind of like set those parameters for the technician to use, you get better data, right? And I guess some softwares used to have the ability to, like, let's say, type in like a location, right, for a device. Well, if I just create a drop down thing to say your locations are kitchen, garage, all this kind of stuff, then I know my data is going to always say kitchen. It's going to always say this stuff. Where if the technician types in kitchen, he might misspell it, right? So if I go to run a report for like a device with locations, and I'm just giving an example here, I did kitchen in the database, but the technician wrote kitchen and spelled it wrong. I'm going to have all these different kitchens throwing out in a report. And so controlling that data inside of the software is also important, and controlling what they have what the choices are they have.
So I'm gonna play back to you what I just heard, and I'm gonna use the word clarity, right? Or actually, I'm gonna use two words. I'll say agreement, number one, and then clarity, right? Agreement on what the terms mean, because if you say kitchen, they're not going to the den, because there's agreement as to what that means, and then clarity comes because of that agreement. So, gosh, just talk about efficiency. Instead of they walk into a room and say, I don't see anything here, they have to call the office and say, what are you guys talking about? Because it's not clear to me. And you say, well, this is what I actually meant. Instead of that back and forth, they look at it. It's the software tells them, done, right? And the efficiency and effectiveness goes up, right? I mean, that's ultimately what you're looking for, that employee efficiency and effectiveness. I mean, that's what the customer wants at the end of the day too, right? they don't want you walking around their office or their residence any longer than you need to, right? They just want you to get your stuff done and go on about your business, right?
Right. Yeah, you're making me think. The other day I was at where I live. I had this small mom and pop pest control company comes up, and I know I'm kind of getting off track, but like the guy was I asked the guy, I was like, hey, what product are you about to apply? This is the funniest thing. You're going to love this. So I was like, hey, what pesticide are you about to use? No, I said, what product are you going to use? And he said, oh, it's a pesticide. And I was like, I know it's a pesticide. I said, what product are you going to use? And he's like, oh, Termidor. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But it was just like, I think he just thought because I was a normal person, he was like, oh, it's a pesticide. And I'm like, first off, you never tell the customer like it's a chemical or a pesticide. That usually deters people. That's a big thing in the industry, not to get too far off track, but a lot of people hear chemical and they get scared, right? Or pesticide, they get scared. They want to hear like it's a product, right? We're using a product to treat and control the target pest.
That's a really interesting point. I've made this case with people about the word organic. I mean, sure, organic is good, but I've said to people, well, 500 years ago, what did you call stuff that was grown directly out of the earth 500 years ago? That was organic too, right? But there's such a term with organic is higher quality. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just simply saying it just is what it is, right? And the idea that you're around chemicals all the time anyway, chemicals just has a negative connotation to it. And when you say product, they're like, oh, it's custom formulated for my needs. It's interesting how people react to that. So I what I wrote down here is another blind spot, is just this idea that within the organization there needs to be agreement and clarity. And so I think what I'm hearing here is the subtext is that the software, if you use software properly, you can create that agreement and clarity much faster, because they can pick den or kitchen or garage or whatever the case may be in selecting that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, laying all of that out and having that agreement and clarity is going to be massive.
So I'm going to call that efficiency and effectiveness. What else? What else? I mean, you've talked to a number of companies. You talked to through lots of licensing agencies. What are the other things that you've seen changing in the industry that people need to be aware of? What are the forecasts or trends that you see in the coming years, especially with all the technology and product that's been coming to market?
I mean, I always stick with the remote monitoring stuff. I mean, that's huge. So I kind of just fall back to that because I feel like it's the wave of the future. I mean, it's just, It's becoming bigger and bigger. A lot of companies are taking advantage of it. A lot of clients are actually hopping on board more with the technology than they are without the technology. They actually like it. They like to see what the data is.
Okay.
You
And
know?
why do you think that is? I mean, what's sort of the feeling behind that for that customer to say, yeah, I want that remote monitoring thing, and I want to be able to get a notification on my iWatch. Why do you think that is that they want that?
I think that they look, for me, I'm just coming from I'm thinking out loud here, right? That I think that they're probably looking at it as like, okay, it's technology. Yes, technology does have issues, but for the most part, technology is computer made, right? It's man made. So they're going to look at it and say, we know 99% of the time this technology is going to work, right? Where you have a technician, and not that technicians aren't great, but they do the same things day in and day out. And they're running, depending on the company, 12 to 20 stops a day. So you have to look at the fact that, you get tired. I mean, we get tired looking at a computer. We make mistakes. It's just part of being human, where the technology is going to make less mistakes. So there's going to be more efficiency, in my opinion, with the technology.
So I'm gonna take that and distill that the way I kind of heard it and repeat back to you what I heard. When I as a data company, we're constantly distilling how people are performing within companies, not to the point of where you beat them over the head. Just simply, it's unbiased information, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just data. It doesn't tell you any story. It just simply says what is. That's all.
Right.
And now by using remote monitoring, customers, whether it's a residence or commercial facility, whatever the case may be, now they have access to consistent and reliable, unbiased information, right? They can just see something was trapped, for example, right, from very early on in the conversation. Oh, now I need to go visit that island in that sort of case. But just to see that the product has been released, right? Say that again.
Yeah, no, and I was just going to give you I was going to give you another good example is
Okay.
residentially, right? You might have a customer that has a rodent infestation, right?
Mhm.
So you go in and you install these remote monitoring devices, and you can not only let the customer be a part of this journey if they want to be a part of it, but you can also come back with this awesome data, analysis saying we took your infestation from here down to here, right? And like you said, it's non-biased, and literally it's just saying there's no like, I went in and I counted how many I caught and all that kind of stuff. It's literally, it's the proof is in the pudding per se, right?
Yeah, so a quantitative assessment of our value, right? So it tells you this is where you were. You're at 5, and I've brought you down to 3, whatever that means, right?
Right.
But now all of a sudden there's some value, and they can see you defining the value as opposed to, hey, I just haven't seen anything, so I think you're kind of working, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly. No, that's perfect. And so something like that, some customers aren't going to care. They're going to be like, they're going to trust you, and they're going to be like, cool. Yep. It's gone. I trust you. But then a day later, they hear a rodent run through their attic, and they're going to be like, well, wait a minute. I thought you said I'm going to call them back. I thought you said it was all gone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I heard once that the best customer support call is the one that you don't receive, as in there's nothing that's bothering them enough to call you, because once they do call you, there's something that they've been festering on for some period of time, long enough that they, whether it's the wife, the spouse, the business owner, whatever the case may be, they've been sitting on it for long enough. They're like, all right, I got to pick up the phone and call, because it's a pain in the ass to call people.
Right. What do they say? No news is good news.
That's exactly right. Talk to me about culture. Look, running a business is no joke. As you start empowering these technicians and giving them remote monitoring technologies, how has that shifted the conversation between customers and technicians? How does that? How have you seen that start to shift? Is that conversation changed at all? Is it exactly the same?
I would say it's similar. I mean, I think the tech, I can tell you the feedback that I've gotten from the technicians that use the remote monitoring absolutely like love it.
Okay.
They love what it does. I think they love the fact that, like, you know, they're not, for some of them, depending, let's say that I normally check the station every 2 weeks, right? Now I'm only going to check it once a month because I have this technology. So, for 12 times out of the year at this site, this technician is not having to bend over and hurt their knees and hurt their back and like all this other stuff, and so for them, it's great. And as far as that, that conversation with the customer, the cool thing is they actually, depending on who the customer is, they make the customers part of the journey. And what I mean by that is
Mm.
like if let's say you're using, any of these technologies, whether it be surf sensor, active sense with Dow, bell sensing, they let that customer have access to that portal, right? So that customer can now go in and they can see what's going on. They can actually see the devices being checked in front of their face, like it's live data. And so that part is really cool for the end user client, because that end user client's not now having to feel like they have to go to that technician all the time. They can see what they need at all times.
So I love this phrase that you use here. Customers get to be part of the journey, right? Or at least they have the ability to opt in if they want to. If they don't want to, they don't care. That's fine. They can just say, "Hey, look, my number went down. That's all I want to know." But they can invest in that journey if they'd like to.
Yep.
If they want to talk about it at the barbecue that weekend, they're more than welcome to, right?
Right.
But they can lean into it. Keith says, perfect, taking the data and translating into better insight for the data owner and the customer. And I think that's kind of what I heard here is, right? The techs love the database monitoring. The customers get to be part of the journey. Everybody wins because there's more transparency in the whole relationship there. And
Right.
that's good, right? I think that's a really good thing. So I'm actually going to write that down here is another blind spot is if you get to invite the customer into the journey, or let me start back up a little bit. If the technician has the opportunity to invite the customer into the journey, I think it's a better journey because both of them are part of it. Am I saying that right?
Oh, absolutely. I know I'm one of those customers that always likes to be part of any journey. So if I get invited, I'm like, yep, let's do this. I want to be a part of it, where, like I said, I think part of that is also kind of, you bring up a good point, Vinay, is that technicians need to know their customers well enough to know, like, what is that preferred form of communication? What is that? How involved do they want to be? Because you might have a customer that's like, you know what, just leave the stuff at my door. I don't ever really want to see you or talk to you, but I still want you to communicate with me. So I want you to still, basically, if you see an opportunity for, I don't know, if you're walking around my house and you see potential termites, I still want you to tell me, but I just don't want you to tell me. Tell me at my door, don't tell me to my face.
Yeah. So this is interesting. The word that keeps popping up, and this is actually the word that was coming to my head when we were talking about that park ranger and getting the opportunity to sit and work with them kind of, shoulder to shoulder to figure out when those traps are going off remotely. It's the word empathy, right? Empathy is about this idea of seeking to understand. And these remote monitoring technologies allow you to truly customize the experience for not only the tech, but also for the customer and seek to understand how they want to be dealt with. Because if you can turn a 20-minute visit to a customer into something where you say, hey, Ms. Johnson, I know let me just give you 30 seconds as to what happened to it, because that's what she wants. Perfect.
Right.
That's a win. If they want to walk around the property with you as you do it, great. Here's what I'm seeing here. Here's what I'm seeing here. Here's what I'm seeing here. These stations are working. And that might be what they want. So it allows you to empathize with that customer along the way. That's what I heard.
Yeah, no. And, my mind's like spinning here. Sorry. So I'm kind of like, taking a step back. I was thinking about the remote monitoring. So something that Bell offers is called a T-Rex trap.
Okay.
It's the thing basically you catch the mouse in. And one cool thing about it is you can put this up in drop ceilings, right? So if you have a commercial client or even a residential client where they have issues and you put it up there, the cool thing is once you put it up there, you can just wait to get that notification, right? That you caught something, or sorry, not notification. For Bell, you'd have to be on site, but I can drive up. If I'm a technician, I can drive up and be like, okay, cool. I'm just grabbing my phone and I'm like, all right, I turn on my app and I'm like, all right, cool. No activity. I'm just going to text Mrs. Johnson and say, hey, Ms. Johnson, no activity today. I'll be back in a few days to check it out. But you think about the fact that old school, a technician had to get up on a ladder. They had to grab it. They had to check it. So we're going back to efficiency here. We're also going back to that potential decrease in comp claims, because now my technician's not climbing up a ladder, right? So every time he climbs up and down a ladder, that's a potential chance for that person to fall.
I don't know. I mean, look, as I'm going through this, I feel like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here, right? I'm not seeing anything that's bad in terms of how technology. technology is empowering a lot of things to happen. I mean, I'm hearing about employee safety, right? Comp claims go down.
Oh yeah,
That's a good thing, right?
huge.
You care about the employee because you give them the opportunity to do that. So you're creating a better culture where you say, I care about you. You give them
Mhm.
these tools where they don't have to drive by and visit so often. They could potentially remotely monitor it or just sit in the parking lot and check and see, and then head on to the next one, right? So they can get that efficiency. They can get that effectiveness. There's more safety. Is there a dark underside or an underbelly to all of this stuff? This sounds too good to be true based on all the stuff you're telling me here.
Right. What do they say? Technology, unfortunately, it always has issues. It always has ups and downs. So there's definitely, challenges to it. However, I think the initial investment outweighs by far the reward. So I think it's, you know what I mean? I think you have to put in a little bit of effort in the beginning, but that effort's going to be totally worth what the reward is at the end of all of it.
So I'm just writing. I've been furiously jotting notes as I'm trying to talk. Also listen and talk to you. So initial investment outweighs the initial cost is what I'm saying. Is what I'm writing here.
And maybe I should do that backwards. The reward definitely is, it outweighs, or I don't know you know what I'm trying to say here. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying.
I don't know if I'm saying it right, but
That's right. You won at the end, is I think what I heard.
right. Yes. The investment is worth the reward by far.
Right. So why don't more people do it? Why do you think people get stuck and say, I mean, I feel like a lot of people exist in this place where they're just fighting fires all the time. I don't get the sense that you are fighting fires all the time.
I'm always fighting fires, but I'm good with resolutions and coming up with ways to fix it, and so I'm able to implement those resolutions and move forward.
Gotcha. So why don't
but
you?
as far as sorry,
Yeah, why not others? Why not others? Why don't you think they invest on these things? I mean, it sounds like the silver lining on all of this.
I think people are scared of the cost. They see a
Mhm.
cost, and a good example is like, we'll just go with like Bell, right, or even ActiveSense or any of those. They look at it and they're like, okay, this cost is too expensive, right? How am I going to? I don't know. Let's say we'll go with like a Bell sensing Evo Express station, right? A rodent base station. Let's say that normally as a pest control company, that cost me $10, right? But if I want to buy this upgraded version, it's $25, right? So they're looking at it and they're like, oh my God, like that's $15 times 150 stations, blah, 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 blah. They're thinking that this cost is gonna, they're afraid of figuring out the cost and how to integrate that into everything, right? And that's what's important is, how do I take that cost and how do I balance it out everywhere, so I can make the investment.
So, I mean, I always tell my team when I'm working with them and they get stuck, I said, step up a level, right? Once you step up a level, things start to become more elegant in the solution. And I think that's what I'm hearing for you is, if you're looking purely, you're trying to make a decision based on the cost, it might be a little too short-sighted, right? Think a bigger picture. If you have the ability to build a safer culture, have more customers that you build a higher level of satisfaction with, that you only have to monitor once a month as opposed to twice a month. Yeah, you may spend $15 more, but you spend a heck of a lot less to actually monitor it at that point.
Especially right. I mean, if you're decreasing the frequency of visits, then you're saving money on gas, time, everything from paying your employees labor, all of those costs.
Yeah. So you need to take a look at the bigger picture, not the smaller picture.
Correct. Yeah.
So I've heard a bunch of things here, and I'm just kind of looking at the clock here. I mean, I don't know about you. It seems like the last 50 minutes went really fast, a lot faster than I had expected. And
right.
I want to review through a couple of what I saw as blind spots, because I'd like to tease these out in little clips for people to kind of kind of listen in on. Number one I heard was the efficiency of the technician and effectiveness of the technician. That's something worth spending your time in, because it leads to cost reductions or value, the delivery of more value. Mm-hmm. Number two was this idea that the software can increase that efficiency and that effectiveness of the technician because it's less garbage in, therefore less garbage out. I heard number three was technology is the game changer because it allows you to focus potentially on the connection to people. Because like Jerry chimed in and used this term, automated accountability. There's automated accountability once you start using technology the right way, right? Number four is this idea of agreement and clarity. if you get agreement and clarity within the organization, communications levels increase and become more efficient, right, and effective.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And last one I heard, or I think the last one, was really just this idea of remote monitoring. It empowers you to give a quantitative assessment that invites customers into the journey. Did I get those all right? I mean, those seem like 5 really good nuggets for anyone to kind of just chew on, because I mean, those are not 5-minute things that you do. Those are things you constantly reinvest in to improve it. But if you invest in those 5, you can probably kick your game up to the next level or two. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. All of them.
So I always like to give people a place to start, right? I mean, there's a lot there. If someone wanted to kind of start this journey of using, I think what I heard, technology, because technology brings the data and it helps build the culture that you want. I mean, we heard about safety culture, right? We heard about cost savings. We heard about more value delivery to customers. If you were to give me in 3 steps, or 2 or 3 steps, if someone wanted to start investing more in technology, where would you direct them? Where would you tell them to start?
So I guess I'm in my mind, I think of I'm over here, 4 different things, right?
Okay.
I look at I look at the pest control software.
Okay.
I look at some sort of, depending on how the size of your company, or maybe not even necessarily how big your company is, some sort of license management software. If you don't have softwares that fully integrate all these things, I would look at some sort of training software. I didn't even really get to that today, but we fully utilize an amazing training software as well that does everything from A to Z. I mean, I can do CEU trainings in it. I do everything. And then last but not least, I would go with some sort of remote monitoring software. Now, what would be beautiful is that if we had one software that just goes and puts all these together, that would be honestly incredible. But I don't know if that exists yet.
Well, Adam, that's actually what I've been trying to build as a company. One place where it tells you what the alerts are, because I've worked in so many industries where there's so many alerts coming at you. Just like you said with the park ranger, he didn't want to go out to the island until you knew that the movement sensor was telling you something. I don't need to go until then, right? I don't want to keep getting a bunch of false positives, because that's what you get with software, right? You get a bunch of false positives. When do I really need to pay attention? When is an employee getting disengaged because they're not monitoring their traps, right? They're not visiting their customers. Their revenue production per hour has started to drop. Hey, Jack, is everything okay? Right? I mean, that's the time to jump in, but it's all these different softwares tied together. Because you're right, there's a lot of information out there.
There's a ton. But another thing too, I was just going to throw out there is that sometimes I think a lot of people, and I'm just going to revert back to a training software, right? I invested in a research and looking at a lot of those. I mean, anything from MindFlash, I can't think of all of them, but there's some that are super, super duper expensive. I mean, thousands of dollars a year. And I was able to find one out of Georgia that is an awesome software. And you can, if you have a small mom and pop company and you have let's say less than 20 people, it's $49 a month. And it does everything you need. So it's just an incredible opportunity to be able to automate all of that.
Yeah, it seems like that whole automation is a key when used properly, right? I mean, you have this remote monitoring station. I always think of Bugs Bunny and Marvin Martian talking about how great power can be used irresponsibly, or something like that. I mean, I got that quote from Bugs Bunny. Imagine that. But just this idea that if you have a remote monitoring station, you could use it to the point where you just don't bother to visit your customers, because they already know. Actually, it's an opportunity to invest deeper into that relationship and say, hey, Ms. Johnson, let me tell you what I've done for you lately. And take that win by just stopping by for 6 minutes, right? As opposed to a 20-minute or 30-minute visit. You can just stop by and say, hey, everything's looking great. Just wanted to stop by and just let you know. Do you have any questions for me? And she probably doesn't, right?
Right.
So there is an opportunity with automation and this efficiency and effectiveness to build deeper relationships. But like you said, if you're looking at just the cost, then you might miss the silver lining that comes with all of this automation and the technology that empowers a deeper relationship there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to definitely point out that if anybody wants to reach out and ask for advice or anything from me, I'm more than willing to help.
Yeah, I will have your contact information in the post when we post this out there, so that people can reach out to you if they've got questions. I will tell you, there's a lot here. I mean, usually I take about a half a page of notes. I actually have a page that kind of goes around the corner because I had to rotate it twice to get all my notes on
Glad I
here.
could put your fingers to work.
We've got a couple more minutes. You talked about training. Tell me about training, because training is super important to culture. It means you're investing in your people. And look, all value comes out of your people. And I think that's the end of that statement. Talk to me about the training. What do you tell me about the training? What do you all believe? What's your philosophy around that?
Definitely believe in training. It's massive. So I think anything around safety is important. So safety trainings are a part of a company. Depending on what state you're in, I don't know if they even require those, but they might require anything from, weekly to monthly to quarterly safety trainings. We obviously CEU trainings is critical for us because in California we have QAL, we have, structural field rep. So both of those, require anywhere from 16 to 20 hours every 2 to 3 years. And so that's part of it. But then I think the big thing I came back to before was that kind of making sure everybody's cohesive and on the same page, right? So streamlining that training is just so important to me that regardless of whether, a branch wants to give, individualized training, outside of what we do, as a company, training is just so important, from many perspectives. Also, I think for me, training, finding the right trainer, right? Knowing that trainer, knowing what they bring to the table, knowing the actual, value of the information they bring to the table is also important.
Yeah, I use the word alignment and congruence all the time, right? Everyone's on the same sheet of music, because we all interpret things different ways. But if we know we all understand what the outcome is supposed to be, we will all end at the same destination. Everyone just needs to understand what that destination is, right? And
Absolutely. And
go ahead.
something really small on a small level is just like insect identification, right? Like it's so funny that I'll have like a technician send me this and they'll be like, what is this? And I'll be like, well, based on the picture you sent me, it looks like a piece of pepper, right? And so I actually created a video that I put out on YouTube, and it's like the proper way to take a picture of a critter, right? To send it for ID. Just something as simple as that, just because kind of like I said, I was running into this challenge constantly, and I was like, what's a way for me to come up with a resolution? And so the video was a good resolution.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I wanted to say thanks to Jerry and Keith for chiming in and actually
Yes.
significantly shaping the way this conversation went and sort of the talking points. I think we got some really good points from both of you. Thank you both
Absolutely. Yes.
for joining in. And Adam, hey, I really appreciate it. I don't know that I've taken this many notes in one podcast, because I should be listening most of the time as opposed to taking notes, but there's lots of nuggets that you dropped here. So I really appreciate your time and attention and dropping some knowledge on us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to having this published so others can start to enjoy from it as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.